These are measures of how do we go from what the laboratory was to something that people can trust what the results are. And routinely inserting these in, being able to test routinely, it gives us the ability to do things like we've got, say in toxicology, we test the same material multiple times, different people test it, they test it on different days. So we are getting to a point now that we can look statistically at those results and say 8 different analysts consistently and statistically get the same answer on the same material. We can demonstrate that the same answer is obtained across day, across calibration, across batch, across analyst, across instrument, across pipetting equipment, all of those things we can show, are starting to be able to show that statistically. Ultimately, one of the things that I'd like to be able to do with blinds, and we still are ways from it because it's a big numbers game, is start to actually have a statistically based error rate. I mean, we talk under Daubert criteria of a known error rate,
right.
And it's kind of not so much of a secret anymore that really in forensics, nobody can really state error rate. We can talk about measurement uncertainty, but we can't really say error rate because
right.
you're not able to test it.
Right.
But what we're doing is we're putting stuff that we know is negative, we're putting stuff that we know is positive, we know what the result should be, so we can now begin to estimate statistically what that error rate is. But it does take a lot of numbers because we're really looking for very small error rates, which means you got to run a lot of these things.
And if you guys want to join in on our conversation here, you can call in 713-807-1794 is the number. You can also hit us up on Twitter at HCCLA_TV. So you've had 500 tests, blind, and not a single problem.
Oh, we have had things not go as expected.
Okay. But you haven't had an error by an analyst.
We haven't had an error by an analyst. Actually, we've had some errors by quality.
What do you mean by that?
I think for a controlled substance case, seized drugs case, we were preparing, we had reference samples at the time we had purchased, and we had prepared methamphetamine powder with something, and I guess at some point something got contaminated, so when the results came back there was cocaine in it or something, vice versa, and we were like, no, that's not right.
You're not buying cocaine at Walmart, so
not buying cocaine at Walmart.
In the back you can find.
Yeah.
But so the 500, and none of your analysts have failed the blind, so to speak, at this point. It's posted. It's posted on your website, so it's publicly available. But I think the question that the defense bar is going to want to know is, all right, that's all well and good. Yep. It's up there. It's on the website. It's publicly available, but that's like going and find a needle in a haystack potentially as you get more and more blind quality controls up there. Do you feel like when you have a case that's submitted that you should, if an analyst in the past has screwed up a blind, should you send that to the DA's office as part of the report and say, this analyst, here's how many times that person has screwed up and here's the blind? Do you think it's your responsibility to send that along with the analyst report on the case?
Well, I think short answer to that is yes. If we had, certainly the most troubling circumstance would be something that we had inserted, say, as negative. So like saying in controlled substances, we try to insert as many negatives as we can. We're actually a little limited on how many negatives we can put in because they start to stick out. We only have about 3% of the cases that come through turn out to be no controlled substance. So if we put too many blinds in that are negative, people are going to start understanding that most of the blinds are negative, and so that kind of defeats the purpose.
You're going to be owning a lot of Starbucks.
Yeah, owning a lot of Starbucks.
Right.
But if you've got a negative that turns out to be something else that's unexpected, why did that happen? And I think it would be pretty quick in the investigation of what happened there that we would end up with a corrective action. As we have a corrective action up there, just like we've got with all the rest of the corrective actions that we have, or quality incidents, those are on the website, but they're also associated with the report that those cases were affected by. So now when you get that report, you would have that corrective action associated with that individual report.
We oftentimes see new drugs enter the market. Okay?
Yes, we do.
And a lot of them are increasingly becoming synthetics or different. They mimic the same type of drug.
Yep.
And so we'll hear that this particular drug is spreading like crazy, and the labs are all coming back no controlled substance for a limited time. Does the Houston Forensic Science Center have a list of particular drugs that it usually goes through, and then when it encounters something that's obviously something's up, there's a new drug on the market, it's from China, it's some different molecule but mimics the same thing, how is the Houston Forensic Science Center adapting and changing to this kind of new age kind of drug, synthetic drug era?
That is something that all the labs are struggling with, because we went from a world 5 to 8 years ago that was maybe about 250 drugs, really encompassed the world of controlled substances, and now it could be potentially tens of thousands. And some of them can be identified. There certainly are drugs that it's very difficult to actually say it is that particular enantiomer of that particular compound. And some of those no controlled substances there's something we've been able to identify, but it's not controlled. So it's still a controlled substance.
Interesting.
And that is a challenge of the legislative framework to try and stay ahead of these shifting compounds of what now falls outside of control.